Hi everyone and welcome to the channel. First off, I want to apologize that I didn't put out a video last week. Now, as you may have seen, there's been a few changes to the channel, least of which is the new name Shaluso and the new introduction. I've been getting some new equipment, and more importantly, I got access to a few new watches. A couple friends of the channel have lent me their watches to review, and I came all the way to Australia to review them. So I won't take up more of your time. Let's get into the first review, and today's review is the IWC Pilot Chronograph.
The IWC Pilot Chronograph makes no apologies about being a pilot's watch. It's big, it's busy, it's extremely easy to read, but at the same time it still has that elegance that you would expect from a brand like IWC. The Arabic numerals for the hour markers and the hands are all done in white and with luminova, and then you have that nice little dash of red on the running minutes, just so it's really easy to read the time when you need it. The day-date complication and the chronograph registers, on the other hand, are backgrounded in black with white to accent the information, which makes them blend in when you don't need to see them, but they're still extremely easy to read when you do want to see them. And that all adds to the elegance of this watch. With its simple black leather strap by Santoni and its brushed stainless steel finish, this is a watch that means business, but at the same time is still elegant and can fit in any circumstance. Speaking of the fit, despite the fact that this is a relatively tall watch at 15.5 millimeters, it still wears extremely light and it doesn't feel bulky or top heavy. You compare that to my Tudor Black Bay Chrono, which is 14.9 millimeters, and that feels like it's weighting all over the place when you put it on anything other than the bracelet. This, by contrast, it sheds its weight, it sheds its height, and it just feels as elegant as it looks. And that lends to a lot of the versatility of this watch. This is a watch that's perfectly comfortable going to a formal event or being worn with a suit when you go to work, as it is when you just, wear it on the weekend with a t-shirt. Its versatility allows it to sort of fit in any situation, and a lot of that comes down to the fact that it doesn't feel like a big bulky watch despite being 43 millimeters. And then when you look at it on the wrist, it makes its presence known, but not in a way that's obnoxious or that feels oversized. It just sits just right at the end of the day. If you're into watches at all, or if you're particularly interested in chronographs, then this layout should be very familiar. That 12, 9, and 6 layout of the chronograph matched with a day and date at the 3 o'clock, it's that characteristic of the Valjoux 7750, which is seen service across a broad range of watches in the price spectrum, and it does its service here on the higher end of that price spectrum with the IWC Pilot Chrono. To achieve its status as being called the IWC Caliber 79320, IWC does regulate this movement to near chronometer spec, and they do also add some decoration as well, so it isn't just a straight off-the-shelf 7750. But even if it was, that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. It's important to remember that the 7750 has been in service for well over 30 years. It's a reliable movement, and being a pilot's watch, being a tool watch, that is something perhaps the IWC valued and wanted to stay true to the concept. And it does feel robust. The pusher feel is nice and crisp, it snaps right back when you reset it, and despite the fact that they did decorate it, they haven't actually gone to the trouble of putting a sapphire case back there, which I actually appreciate. I think that if it's not an in-house movement or an extremely decorated one, it's a much better move to just save the thickness and save the money and put a nice solid case back with a beautiful engraving so that they can highlight their strengths and pedigree as opposed to highlighting the part that they outsourced. Now, speaking of strengths, I have to highlight the finish and the details. This is a relatively simple watch, it's just black and white mostly, satin finish on the steel, but it's those little details that IWC chooses to show that really make all the difference. Things like the signature on the crown, it's beautifully intricate. They could have just written IWC, but they've actually gone to the trouble of engraving an entire pattern and little subtext around it. There's a subtle polished bevel that runs along the case, top and bottom, that again, it's just that little flourish to give it a bit of extra shine, despite being such a discreet watch. The same thing goes for the orange on the underside of the strap or the engraved pin buckle. All of these are just little details that add up to making this simple pilot's watch something special. And these details don't stop at just the aesthetic. Obviously, as a pilot's watch, it has that layout, it has that contrast, the size, it's got that engraving of the Junkers aircraft on the case back, but there's other details, ones that you don't see that still emphasize that concept. Things like the soft iron cage to make it more anti-magnetic, because that's a genuine concern for pilots when flying. And then there's also the seals on the pushers, the crown, and the case back that allow for air to escape during changes of extreme pressure. And that's not for diving, because obviously this is only a 60-meter water-resistant watch. Instead, that's to deal with cabin depressurization, which again is something that only a professional pilot would need to concern themselves with in the case of an emergency. But the fact that they took the time to add in these little details, it's what makes watches like this special.
So now getting into the feel segment of the review, which is pretty much how I actually feel about the watch, what it's like wearing it, and what's sort of my overall impression of it. Now, of course, we need to look first off at the 3 pros and cons of the watch. The first thing I'd like to highlight is the legibility of this watch. This is, of course, a pilot's watch, but it really does make the difference when you can just look at it right away and see exactly what time it is. And especially for being a chronograph, that sort of legibility isn't something you normally come across, so definitely something worth highlighting. The second thing I want to highlight as a pro of it is that I love the way that it still stays true to what it is. It is a pilot's watch, so they still gave it the anti-magnetic properties. They still gave it that glass that won't pop out if you undergo a loss of cabin pressure, which probably 99% of the people who own this watch will never have to put to any use. But the fact that they committed to it and still included that is something that is worth highlighting, and that's what I love about watches like this, that they give you those details that you might not need but that you can always appreciate. And last but not least, I want to highlight the fact of how light this watch wears. This is a watch that's just as tall as my Tudor, but it feels like it doesn't weigh anything compared to what my Tudor does. I've been wearing this now for a few days, and it definitely has a nice light feel to it despite being such a robust watch. And at 43 millimeters, it does work perfectly on the wrist. It's not too big like some pilots' watches are, but it still has that nice presence, but all without feeling huge or heavy on the wrist, and that's definitely something I can appreciate. Of course though, like any watch, no watch is perfect, and it does have its 3 downsides as well. The first one is that for what you pay, I would have liked to see an in-house movement. I do know that IWC does modify that Valjoux movement quite a lot, but still, again, you know, in this day and age, everyone really does want an in-house movement, especially on the higher end price point. So I do think that is something that, especially in the next few years, is going to keep working against it until they put in their own movement. The second thing I'd say that maybe works against it is its low water resistance. Now this is a pilot's watch, so it doesn't have to be 200 or 300 meters water resistant, but 60 meters is kind of on the lower end, and I would think that, you know, they'd still be able to squeeze out maybe 100. You know, you have watches that are still dressy that can still manage that sort of water resistance. Just have that confidence that you're not going to damage it when you're washing your hands or if you get some water splashed on it. And then last but not least, the only other thing that stood out to me that I thought maybe would work against it is the pin buckle. It's a beautiful Santoni strap, but it has just a pin buckle instead of a deployant. And again, at this price point, a deployant is what you would want to see. And I think that was a bit of a missed opportunity for IWC to highlight more of their attention to detail and nice engineering. But all things aside though, this watch is great. Like I said, it wears really, really light, which for a chronograph, especially one of this size, is not something that I'm used to. So it's definitely something that I would recommend if you wanted to get this. And also, it is a very complete watch with that day-day complication and the chronograph. The fact that you can wear it in a formal occasion as much as you can wear it in day-to-day, it does have a lot of versatility and it is very complete. You could easily have this watch as your only watch. Now, the owner of this watch, they ended up getting a really nice discount on it and also got a 10% GST off because they were traveling. That's one good thing about if you buy a watch here in Australia, it's really easy to get the tax off it. So it's like a 10% discount on any new watch you buy. So he ended up picking it up for about 6,500 Australian dollars and got the tax off it. And that's on a retail price of 8,000 Australian dollars. So it does make a difference. And it is something to look into if you're considering getting an all-rounder like this that you need to wear at the office and that you want to wear around home on the weekends. But let me know in the comments below what you think about the IWC. Would you pick this as your one and only watch, or would you maybe get another watch to complement it? And if you like the video, please do like it and share it. And if you like the content that I've been putting out, make sure that you subscribe to the channel as well, because there's plenty of good content coming up, and share it with others so that they can enjoy it as well. In any case, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.